I'll request the control after the poll. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Revanta, Senior Manager on the Biotech Solution Development team. Philippa just talked to you about how to scale your laboratory, but we realized that in many cases, emerging biotechs may not be fully staffed or equipped to perform all experiments, and outsourcing research might be another option to consider. In this session, I'll talk about outsourcing, specifically what are the criteria one needs to consider for outsourcing and how to pick a right outsourcing partner. Now let's take a quick poll to understand how many of you have outsourced projects or at least part of the project. Jenny, if we can get the poll up. Let's give it a few more seconds. That is awesome. So it looks like most of you have either outsourced projects or thought about outsourcing. So basically, it looks like you guys have experience of outsourcing, so we don't need to touch on outsourcing. Just kidding. Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, as I was saying, with outsourcing, of course, majority of you have the outsourcing experience. But at the same time, when it comes to outsourcing, the criteria that one needs to consider along the various phases of drug discovery continuum are very different. So you may have outsourcing experience in certain phase or phases of the drug discovery continuum, but the requirements for other phases are very different, and it is important to have that know-how. Right. So again, before we get into the criteria or considerations for outsourcing, it is assumed that you have a project that you're working on, or at least have a project concept in mind. Oops, there we go. Ooh, so yeah, when one looks into the various criteria for outsourcing, if I can get your attention on the left-hand side of this table, we have listed here a few features that one needs to consider when it comes to outsourcing. Let's start with an example. Say you're looking to generate a stable cell line that is overexpressing a target of interest, and you want it to be functionally validated. This is the scope of the project, basically generating the cell line and validating its functionality. Some of the providers in this instance can just take it on as a single project with one milestone. And some providers would break it down into, say, 2 milestones. One would be to, one would be to generate the stable cell line as such, and the other one would be functional validation. So in case if they are able to generate the stable cell line, but are not able to validate, you won't get charged for both the milestones, right? That way, it will save you in terms of cost as such. Next, you want to consider if you have the necessary expertise and resources, such as equipment and know-how to execute this work in-house. Going back to the example of generating a stable cell line, if you're thinking of using electroporation or transfection, do you say you want to ask, do you have a neon in-house or an electroporation instrument in-house, or know-how of using the right transfection reagents? For further validation of expression, do you have a qPCR machine or a flow cytometer that you can use for validation of expression? Next, you must consider human resources. Do you have enough people with the desired experience to execute on this project? And if you're operating in later stages of drug discovery, the development and manufacturing phase, you have to think about the regulatory aware of these requirements upfront, so you can have all the requirements addressed when you get to that stage. Capital investment is another big consideration. In the example of generating a functionally validated stable cell line that I talked to you about earlier, if you need to generate a clonal cell line to get to the stable cell line generation, you need access to a cell sorter. Or for functional validation, if you need to use a flipper system, these are all CapEx instruments. So you need to plan for it upfront, and it requires large investment. And then depending on nature of the project, some of the other considerations to think about are the need for supply chain forecasting and project management resources. Some of the providers offer these services as part of the service, or these can be offered as add-on services. So to summarize, if there is a service provider who offers the service you are looking for, have necessary expertise and resources, you may want to consider outsourcing at this point. Additionally, when your project progresses to later stages of drug discovery, if you're looking for accurate supply chain forecasting or project management support, it may be better to work with an outsourcing partner. So once you are thinking of outsourcing, what are how do you go about selecting the right partner to work with? Basically outlined here are three types of providers categorized based on which phases of drug discovery they operate in, starting with CRO or contract research organization, who mainly operate in the research and discovery phase, followed by CDMO or contract development and manufacturing organizations. As the name suggests, they operate in the later phases of drug development. On the other hand, service offerings of integrated providers, who are also the primary supplier of products, are more comprehensive, and they span across the whole drug discovery continuum, starting from research to commercialization. Now let's look at the features one needs to consider for selecting an outsourcing partner. So if I can again get your attention to the left-hand side of the table here, the key feature to consider is flexibility of the provider. By this, what I mean is the flexibility of the provider to take on projects, and their offerings should match your requirements. The next thing one wants to look at is the tech transfer ability, and this can be both ways. The ability of provider to execute on methods developed by you or that are transferred by you, or if they have developed the technology, they're transferring that technology back to you for continuation in-house if this is one of the requirements. So going back to the example of generating a stable cell line that I talked about earlier, the provider generates it and say functionally validates it. You want to bring it in-house for further work, so that at that point, it is very important for them to provide a detailed protocol and enable transferring that technology to you. Right. Capacity is another key feature one should consider. do they have enough resources and equipment to execute on your project? Because this can clearly affect the timeline and quality of results. In some instances, some of the providers schedule far out. So they can run 3 or 4 projects in a given year, and you want to make sure that they are ready to get the project going right away, and then there is no lag before they get your project started. The next thing one wants to look at, of course, is the budget. Providers that work on work based on milestones instead of the entire project can be cost effective, whereas others that charge for the entire project, since there is upfront resource investment needed at their end, they can be expensive. The last feature to consider here is one-stop shop. Essentially the provider who can work with you through all the phases of drug discovery, going from discovery to commercialization. So this is important because when one is working with a single provider, the touch points are far fewer. And at the same time, there are dedicated project managers and other resources to support the project throughout its lifetime. So if you're looking to outsource projects in a particular phase where you don't need to look at the drug discovery continuum, then working with a CRO or integrated provider will be a good option for you. If you are looking to outsource in the development and manufacturing phase, it is better to partner with CDMO or an integrated provider, because these providers have the know-how and the technologies to support you through that phase of drug discovery. Now shown here is an example of a scorecard which wherein you're looking for a one-stop shop. In this instance, integrated provider seems to be the best option if you're looking to work with a single partner throughout the drug discovery continuum. Oops. Bill was moving on slides here. Thank you. So yeah, going back to integrated provider, what I was saying in terms of being one-stop shop, Thermo Fisher, in addition to being a primary provider of products, we also offer custom services to fill in the gap for that you may have in your research work. So we have dedicated PMO or the project management support that will help you to keep projects on track, thereby fast tracking the timelines of the project. Additionally, we also provide expertise that or scientists who have worked to develop these cutting edge technologies. So the scientists working on your custom project work very closely with scientists who have developed these cutting edge technologies, thereby, assuring the results at a faster pace and at the same time, good quality of results. And additionally, like I said, having access to the cutting edge technologies and the expertise, it gives you a reassurance that your project will be executed on time and you will get, you can expect quality results there. So essentially, as I said, can go to the next slide, please? As I said, we can work with you on the whole drug discovery continuum, or if you would like to work with us at a particular phase of the drug discovery, be it like early discovery and research or development or even commercial production, we can work with you. And additionally, we also can work with you on setting up clinical trials. So basically, Thermo Fisher is your partner of choice if you're looking for one-stop shop or an integrated provider. Next, I'm going to talk to you about a case study which looks into gene therapy workflow, again, starting from the vector construction to the final formulation and supply chain logistics. So we can, again, work with you throughout the whole continuum of this workflow, or we can work with certain stages of this workflow that you would like to work on. So say in case of vector construction, we can do the designing of the construct and synthesis, as well as scale up the plasmid prep. You can then take this in-house and execute rest of the steps, or you can also work with other providers if if you have already worked with them or would like to transfer. Otherwise, just working through the continuum with Thermo Fisher is also an option. So if you would like to take the work with us, then we can take the designed construct and generate production or generate the viral prep using our expertise in transfection reagents as well as custom media, and then take it to the next step of vector purification. And we can also help you with characterization of this viral prep, and also help manage the supply chain logistics, formulation, and taking this product to the market. So essentially, we can support the end-to-end workflow in this instance and other workflows of your interest. So next time when you think about outsourcing, think Thermo Fisher. I hope I have enabled you to make the right decision for outsourcing your research in terms of which providers to work with. Thank you for that. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Shit. I'll also warm it up with the question I got, which actually is interesting for also One Nucleus perspective as a network. How would you say how important it is to have the outsourcing partner near your facility? So co-localization, physical.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen, for that question. Yeah, sometimes we think that, it is important for the partner to be geographically close, but the short answer to that question is no, it is not really that important because, given the global network, now it is, you would find providers close to your place, but like I said, the short answer there is no, because it all comes down to the skill sets that the partner offers. Right? You want to pick a partner that has the right skill sets and experience in working in that space to be able to provide quality results in a timely fashion.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess also in light of the last 18 months, where we've shown we can operate very efficiently remotely. Maybe just a last question before we move on, because I think that's very relevant. Can you just talk briefly about tech transfer from provider to customer? So how does that work? What needs to be considered? And of course, you're very experienced with that. Customers maybe a bit less. So just to give your view and a few tips.
Absolutely, yeah. So especially talking about the technology transfer from the provider to you, the customer, what is important is the type of provider you are working with. Say in case of CROs or CDMOs, they have their workflows. In general, transfer becomes challenging and not everyone is transparent and open to it. But when you work with integrated providers who are also the supplier of the products, it is in their interest to work with you to enable you to make sure that the technology transfer as well as the details that are captured for the products to use, how to use, and the support that you get is really, really good. So, that is one of the key advantages of working with integrated providers, the transparency and the support that you get for moving the technology in-house when you have the need to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's the experience, a key element here. So good.